It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. Recently, I've been asked by an organization to come in and do a private certified Scrum Master class, which I'm happy to do, not a problem. But they also asked me for a favor. They said, our organization, there's so many books to choose from. There's hundreds and hundreds of Agile books. And our organization is struggling to find the right ones to seed our library with, to put in our library. Is there any way that you could help us pick the top 5 Agile books that have ever been created? Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like quite the challenge to me, right? I sat and I thought about it and I said, limiting the list of so many good books down to 5 is going to be quite the task, but it's a task that I'm willing to take on. Now, to preface this, I am a firm believer that people learn better in short, bite-sized bursts. So what does that mean to you? That this list, while it's going to be inclusive of many books, some of which are incredibly long, others are a little bit shorter, but I feel like overall, this list is going to give you books that have been broken down either into pieces that are chapters that make sense, that are easily consumed in short bursts, or I'm going to recommend really short burst things. So let me give you an example of a couple of short burst things that are not in the top 5 book list that I highly recommend you do. So one of those right out of the gate, make sure you read the Scrum Guide. The Scrum Guide is essential. It's kind of like the Constitution or Declaration of Independence as far as Agile is concerned. If you haven't read the Scrum Guide from Jeff and Ken, you need to read that one right away. The second thing I would recommend is the Agile Manifesto and its supporting 12 principles. That's one that I actually have memorized, and I believe that other people should too, because this is kind of the stacking block, if you will. You could say, how do our beliefs, how does our culture, how does our ecosystem stack up against the Agile Manifesto? And even though the Agile Manifesto is 20 years old for all intents and purposes, it still stood the test of time and is a great guideline to help us. And I know so many people created other manifestos since then, but they just don't stack up. A third document that I would recommend, this is a tandem. There are 2 documents on the Agile Dab website. One is called the Executive Agility Playbook, and the other one's called the Agile Meetings Guide. And I believe that both of those documents are short enough that they could be consumed very quickly, but they're high value, low page count, right? It's just one of those things where once you pick those up, it's going to give you a real good overview of all the things you need to know from a leadership perspective. It's going to help you understand things from a meeting perspective. It's a good framework building piece. It's a good foundational piece to help you really understand what's going on. Yes. And then, of course, on the Agile Dad site, there's lots of other documents and comic books that you can download on the 7 Deadly Sins of Technical Debt, the Agile 12-Step Program. All of these documents are 15 pages or less. So we're talking about real easy to consume documents, right? Another thing that I highly recommend is that you find a solid podcast and listen to it. And I want to thank you all for being here. If people can get you the information that you need in 10 minutes or less every single day, that's a great way for you to engage, because some people just don't have hours to invest in learning, right? But if you do have the time to learn, I stalled enough. Let's give you this list of 5 books. So coming in at number 5. Number 5 is one of my favorite books. It's Agile Retrospectives by Esther Derby and Diana Larsen. Now, in all transparency, I'm friends with most of these other authors, and I'm not trying to plug their books shamelessly. But what I am trying to do is point out the books that I feel have helped more organizations when we've gone in and done training and coaching. This book on retrospectives, it's titled Agile Retrospectives. The subtitle is Making Good Teams Great. And the more I think about the subtitle, I almost think it could have been the title of the book, because the contents of this book help the Scrum Master understand how to facilitate what many consider the most challenging meeting, but it also helps the organization understand the importance of retrospectives and how these individuals who are participating are gaining value in an effort to succeed with continuous improvement, in an effort to move forward in an ecosystem that could be changing or diverse. This book reminds us of a simple structure to help us focus on what's most important to keep teams engaged and keep them pushing forward. All right. That brings us to number 4. Number 4, another book that will be no shock that it's on my list. Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland and co-authored by JJ. What I can tell you is this book, this is the one of the whole thing that, of my whole list rather, that if I just said it just makes sense, this is that book. I'm not a fan of the title, and let me explain why. The title of the book, if I were a leader and executive, twice the work in half the time, and then I open it up to a chapter and learn that I can have a 1,500% increase in productivity, these numbers sound crazy. It sounds like it's just, pie in the sky. But I think to the individuals who are on the ground, learning how to process information, learning how to create and energize a framework, and learning how to have confidence in their ability to execute Scrum, I think that this book is just one that definitely needs to be on the bookshelf and one that you need to read through end to end in order to best understand it all the way through. It's not just a one chapter at a time kind of book. This is one that you have to sit down and read. Okay. Coming in at number 3 is another one of my good friends. This one is The Elements of Scrum. Now, The Elements of Scrum is an older book. It was by Chris Sims and Hillary Louise Johnson. I guess it still is. But this book really shows you some foundational overview information that'll help anyone who's a Scrum Master, any organization, really understand some of the introductory principles and really understand how to pull things together. What I can tell you is this is one of those classic must-reads, if you will. It's the one on the list that I'm like, yeah, okay, we got to get that done. All right, coming in at number 2. Number 2, my dear friend Mike Cohn. His book, Succeeding with Agile, was published in 2009. What I can tell you about this book is this is the one that goes beyond the, okay, I know what all the basic things are. How do I expand past those basic offerings and really understand application so that I can have marked success within Agile? And what I can tell you is this book is genius. Mike doesn't waste time with beating around a bush. He just tells you exactly what you need to know in order for you to have success. And this book is essential. It is critical to have on your shelf. It's the one that I say, now that you understand the basics, read this book. So that's why I put it as number 2 on my list. It really is a good comprehensive overview. And then number 1, right at the top of my list, and it's going to be no surprise to anyone who's ever taken a class of mine, is Essential Scrum by Ken Rubin. This 496-page monster, yes, I said 500 pages, is the most visual learning experience I have ever seen in my life. It is practical. It is pragmatic. It makes sense. It is just one of those books that you read and you're like, yeah, okay, I get it. And the way it's broken down by chapter and the way that Ken took a lot, you could tell he put a lot of time into it. And he took the time to really make sure that it was graphically pleasing, visually pleasing, and yet still exciting and stimulating. It would be very easy for us to find this type of book to be dry or boring in most cases. But this book really does energize you, and it helps you see exactly where you should be heading. And for those who are visual learners, this is the must-have book. There is a visual diagram, reference guide, example, picture, painting, drawing of every single concept that he covers. And that's why the book's so long. So it's not just text, text, text. There's a lot of imagery to help you really engage and stay engaged. And it is by far what I call the number 1 starting point for organizations and for Scrum Masters. So there you go. And I didn't shamelessly plug anything of my own outside of saying, hey, go pick up those short documents, right? But these 5 books should be part of every Agile organization's bookshelf. And these 5 books should be in every Scrum Master's hands so that they can get a good glimpse of the foundational things, the additional things, the elements, the retrospectives. And I think that if you piece all those 5 books together, you're going to get a real good purview of Agile from end to end or Scrum from end to end. So there you go. So that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out. Learn more at agiledad.com, where we'd love to hear about your topic. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.